I was doing some research on your favorite social media platform, Twitter X.
Okay.
Your bio says dunking on the pharma industry with cost plus drugs. Nice basketball pun, by the way. But that's it. That's the entire bio.
Yep.
So why'd you change it to that, and what is cost plus drugs?
Because Cost Plus Drugs is so important to me. The official name is Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs, and it's the only company I've ever put my name on. So that tells you something. Because I wanted everybody to know just how committed I am to it. But kind of the origin story of Cost Plus is interesting. I got a cold email from a Dr. Alex Oshmayansky, who was based in Denver at the time, and he wanted to create a compounding pharmacy to manufacture injectable generic drugs that were in short supply. Because believe it or not, they're drugs, pediatric cancer drugs, drugs for pregnant women that are in short supply and they're generic. You would think that makes no sense at all. But that's the reality. And across the world, there are tens of thousands, if not more, of kids with cancer who die because they can't get access to this stuff. And so he reached out to me and I said, you know what? That's admirable and we can do that, but that's not thinking big enough. And so it was right around the time the farmer bro, Martin Shkreli, was going to jail. And I was like talking to Alex and I was like, how can this dude just buy up, or how can this dude just raise the price of this drug Daraprim to something reasonable to something unreasonable? And what he did was he bought up the entire year's supply of it and did an exclusive. And I'm like, well, that just tells me this industry's messed up. And as I dug in more, it became very apparent that one of the issues was there was zero transparency. And so we created costplusdrugs.com here in Dallas, and it's really, really simple. You go to costplusdrugs.com, you put in the name of the medication, and if it's one of the more than 2,500 that we carry, comes up, tells you what it is, but it shows you our cost. And then it shows you our markup. And if you want it delivered by mail, we have a pharmacist review it, that's $5, and $5 for shipping and handling. That's simple. And then we also have the option now of a pharmacy network to pick it up. And just by doing that, we cut the cost of most generic drugs dramatically. And particularly for a subsection of medications called specialty drugs. The pharmacy benefit managers, the biggest pharmacy benefit managers, created this scam where they call basic generic drugs specialty drugs if they take care of advanced diseases like cancer, even though there's nothing special about it. It's just a pill like any other pill. And because of that, they took the license to price these things at astronomical levels. So a drug like imatinib, which is used for leukemia, if you just walked into some of the bigger or the biggest pharmacy chains, cost you $2,000. Now maybe they've adjusted and it's $200 to $2,000. Or if your employer signed an agreement with them, they'll make you buy it through them, and it'll be $200 to $2,000. The same drug, you go to costplusdrugs.com, like I said, we'll show you a cost, our markup, and it might be $25, $30, depending on the cost. I mean, we have other drugs. I had a friend email me, it's been 18 months now, and he needed this drug called droxidopa. And he had just lost his insurance, and he called up the local pharmacy, and it was going to be $10,000 every 3 months. I'm like, Landon, let me check to see if we can get it. $63 a month, and there's just, I get emails, weekly, if not daily, with the same types of stories. And if you think about it, what happens when you get a prescription from your doctor? They say, Mark, you need this medication, and the next thing they ask you is not, can you afford it? Here's the cost. It's what pharmacy do you use? That's it. And so we're trying to change that paradigm so that people can actually be smart shoppers, because those pharmacy benefit managers working with the insurance companies that they own or own them have figured out ways to extract as much money from patients as they can.
Did you know this much about the drug supply chain?
Oh, no.
When you first
agreed
to join the company?
It's crazy. Like, there are more acronyms than there are in analytics for sports. It's crazy, and it takes a lot of time still to try to know all this stuff and to find out where the inefficiencies are. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to disrupt an industry like we've done on the pharmaceutical side, you understand the industry so you can figure out ways to simplify it. And that's what we've done.
What is the purpose? Is it just to simply provide consumers a cheaper alternative to generics and
branded?
Some brand name?
Yeah, I mean, yes, because, I'll tell you about the email that I got just the other day. It was literally, and this isn't the first time, where someone said, I have this disease and it's fatal. And this drug can keep me alive longer. But I was getting ready to make the decision to not take it because it was going to be X number of $1,000s per month. And I don't want to put my family through the stress of borrowing money or putting it on credit cards just to keep me alive. How sad is that?
That money, just because something is so expensive, they're willing to risk
Just
their lives
to die,
or
right? To shorten their life.
Yeah.
You know, their life. And so, I mean, it's gut wrenching that that's what it's come down to. Because at the end of the day, the pharmacy industry and the healthcare industry in general is really simple. You know, you go to the doctor and the doctor says you need a prescription or you need this care. And there's only two questions. How much are they going to charge you? And how are you going to pay for it? And the entire industry has become an arbitrage on answering those questions. The biggest pharmacy benefit managers will manipulate the pricing. They'll manipulate how they work with your employer or the insurance companies, and to the end of making everything more expensive. And we're trying to change that by simplifying everything.
Where do you hope to see the company in 10, 20 years from now?
So that healthcare is basically a right, and that whether it's companies, if they're still providing insurance then, or cities or states or the federal government, it's become so efficient and inexpensive that if I want to make healthcare for all my employees free, that's up to me because we can afford it. If individuals decide they don't want to get their care through their company, but it's cheap enough that they can make that decision and maybe get paid more, that's up to them. Like for us, for the lives that we cover through my companies, that's exactly what we're doing now. We're doing contracts on healthcare, and if the care you need is in network, there's no out-of-pocket cost for you. You still pay a premium, but even in other countries that have universal healthcare, you still pay premiums one way or the other. So I want the markets to become so efficient, not that so that we don't have to try to force it one way or the other to, replicate what, England or Germany or whatever does with universal healthcare. It's a decision that every entity and every individual gets to make.
What barriers stand in the way of what you hope to accomplish? Does this current administration affect anything at that level?
I mean, it might help us actually, but the reality is there's one barrier on the pharmacy side. And what that barrier is, you mentioned and alluded to the fact that we don't have all brand drugs. Not because we don't want to sell them.
And those are the top sellers.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're not the top sellers.
Revenue
Generics,
making.
from a revenue perspective,
Right.
yeah. Generics are 80-90% of the number of prescriptions. But the brands are the greatest revenue and most expensive. And those are where people can use a lot of help. But why don't we get them? Because the manufacturers refuse to work with us in the same manner they work with the big PBMs. Where with the big PBMs, they pay them marketing fees in order to be on their menu of drugs.
Right.
And those are rebates. And they won't do that with us. And the question is why? And it's not because we don't have access to a lot of patients, we do. But it's because these biggest PBMs effectively threaten them to remove them from the formulas, the menu of options that patients have if they work with us.
CEO Alex, you call him Alex, you call him Doc, what do you have?
Yeah, I call him Alex, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we talked to him, and we asked kind of what's your level of involvement with the company, and he was telling that the other day you were trying to help fix a pipe leak as if, because your landlord situation. I mean,
Right.
What is your level of involvement on a day-to-day basis with the company?
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Half of it is just trying to figure out what other companies are doing, legislative issues, trying to understand the general marketplace like I would with any type of company.
Sure.
Doesn't matter if it's, the Mavs back when I was the governor or, a Shark Tank company. The more I know, the more of an impact I can have. And then using that information and my experience to help make decisions. Because Alex is a rocket scientist, like literally. The dude is like one of the smartest people I've ever met, but he doesn't have the business background that I do. And I don't have, we built one of the few robotics-based manufacturing of drugs in the United States.
Yep.
So when you mentioned the administration, when it comes to making drugs in the U.S., we do it, you know? And so we're getting inquiries from all over the world to try to work with us so that rather than them facing tariffs, they'll come and work through us. And so that's been great. And we'll be, we're already growing quickly, but the robotics have only been online a year, and we'll be expanding that. So
you said mentioned you're trying to scale up the number that you're creating, or at least manufacturing.
Right, and what we
plant.
manufacture.
Right.
So we're working now on deals to add biosimilars, where effectively are generics that are injectables. But because they're biosimilars, they take down some of the most expensive drugs, like Humira went from $8,000 a month to $594 a month. Via biosimilars. Stelara is going to be another one that has comparable declines in costs. And as more and more biosimilars, we're working on deals to manufacture those and other medications. And hopefully we can work with the administration to expand that even more rapidly.
You mentioned that you're spending a lot of time in meetings and trying to do some sort of
Oh, I hate
convincing
meetings.
and
Lots of emails and calls and stuff.
And basically lobbying for change.
Lobbying not so much through the administration per se,
Right.
not legislatively, but working with CEOs. So, for instance, WFAA and your parent company, right? Who do you get your health care from? And there's a 99.99% chance that the CEO really doesn't understand their healthcare benefits. Mm-hmm. You leave it to HR, who reports to the CFO, and nobody quite understands all of it. And I'll guarantee you that here at Belo, you're getting ripped off. I don't know what your plan is, but I know if you're working through the biggest insurance companies and PBMs, you are getting ripped off.
Are you sure you want to retire from Shark Tank with this sort of energy?
No, this is great though. I mean, this is the way I've always been.
Right.
That's what, you guys know.
I mean, I was talking to Alex about this, and so many people could invest in a company like this and get in it for the right mission at the start. And then you're in it for a few years and revenue's not, peaking. So maybe you start to inch that percentage up and start to notch that up. Is that something that you would ever consider? And would you ever sell this company to
No,
depending on the
because
offer?
I haven't taken any outside investors in at all, right? I've written all the checks, and there's a lot of checks, trust me, because I don't want it to be about, okay, what's the share price, what's the earnings? I want it to be about up the industry. Period, end of story. If on my tombstone, I don't want it to be about basketball or anything like that. I want it to be he messed up the healthcare industry. And only because I know this will be on TV, I won't say what I really think, right? Because what could be better than that? We trust our doctors, but nobody trusts the financial side of the healthcare industry. Nobody looks at it and says, wow, this is the way it should be done. Why are you doing this, Mark? It's the exact opposite. It's like, thank you, please do it.
Well, if it's not for maximizing profit margins, what's in it for you?
Like I said, the satisfaction. You can be a capitalist, a hardcore capitalist like I am. And being a capitalist isn't just about, I think a big no-more about capitalism is that it's just about how much money you can make. It's about how much satisfaction you can get. And depending on where you are, in your life, when I was younger, if I did this, it would be how much money can I make? Because I'd want to, get that big score, change my lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. But where I am now, my next dollar is not going to change my life. But the satisfaction of helping out, the entire country, and like we've already changed the pharmacy industry. We've only been shipping for 3 years, and now the biggest pharmacy benefit managers are going to their corporate clients and saying, yeah, we have a cost plus offering. It's only been 3 years, and now they're changing. Now they're lying when they say that. Their lips are moving, but that's what they're pitching and that's what they're selling. And so, where we'll be going forward, hopefully they won't be there and we will.
How much time of your day are you thinking about cost plus?
All day, every day.
Why?
Except when I'm watching Mavs games.
Well, yeah.
Just because. I want to win. I want this to change people's lives like it has, but on a bigger scale. And really, it's just getting the brand manufacturers to work with us. If there was anything I'd want the administration to do, is to say, look, you sell to everybody else. We don't even need the same pricing, because our markup is only 15%. You don't have to sell it to us for the same thing you sell to the big PBMs, or rebate us for the marketing funds that the same way you do the big PBMs. Just give us something. you know.
Are they just scared because the PBMs are just
Yeah,
middlemen bullies? At least it seems
Well,
from.
look at it this way, let's just say you sell something to a restaurant and you're on their menu. And there's a competitor that comes in and Mark says, I've got a better option than that and I want to sell it to you cheaper. Well, the restaurant who owns the menu might say no, because I don't want to lose this guy, or that's a bad analogy, I didn't say it right, but you get the point. They have these things called formularies and they're literally telling them, and they won't do it in writing. I did an interview with the CEO of a major pharmaceutical manufacturer. And I said, and there are all these industry people there. And I said, I know you can't say it out loud, but nod your head if you're afraid of losing formulary positioning if you sell to us. And he just gave me this big smile and he said, next question.
Yeah. Would you be this involved with Cost Plus if you were still governor of the Mavs?
Yeah.
You would be.
Yeah, because basketball's great. I love basketball, obviously, always have, always will. Will be a Mavs fan no matter what, MFFL, but, it's still just a sport.
This gives you a deeper level of.
Well, it's just something, look, I still have aspirations to have impact, and while it's great, and, I want the same for the Mavs, even if I was still, I started this while I was still the governor.
Right.
So it's not
But the degree of how
still
involved.
the same.
It is
No,
the same.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you were still,
I was
fixing,
still-
if pipes were bursting 3 years ago, you were helping.
Right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing's changed in that regard.
Nothing.
Has Cost Plus played a role at all in terms of leaving Shark Tank?
No, not really. That was more family and kids.
Okay.
Friday night, ABC still watch Shark Tank.
Love the plug.
But that was because we shoot Shark Tank in June and September.
Right.
June is when my kids get out of school. I was never there. September, I've got multiple kids with birthdays. I missed my son's birthdays all the time because he was still shooting. And it was one thing when they were tiny, right? But you get to a certain age where you start feeling really guilty about that. And plus, I did it for 15 years.
Good run.
Yeah, it's run its course for me.
Okay, so you sell the Mavs, you're leaving Shark Tank. What do we label this new chapter, this new era for Mark Cuban?
The beginning.
The beginning.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Just because the wrinkles are there don't mean the wrinkles are in here, right? And so I'm still as aggressive, still as passionate, still want to have as much of an impact. And Cost Plus won't be the last thing I do. There'll be more. I'm still a tech geek and there's a lot going on there. And so, there's other industries yet to be disrupted.
You've kind of alluded to it. Is legacy important to you?
Just, people always ask me about it, right? Which just tells me everybody thinks I'm getting old. But I don't yet,
Well, I just mean it in terms of, is this the first company for, what is it? It's not a nonprofit, but it's a personal benefit.
Yeah, PBC.
PBC, right.
Yeah.
So is this the first one
Yep.
that you've owned? So, from afar, it seems like he wants to do things that are more for the greater good.
Yeah, because I wanted to, for sure. It's almost 6 of one, half dozen of another, just in terms of the intent. But like I said, being a capitalist to me, you can be compassionate. And capitalism is about setting a goal, and if it was financial, that's one thing. But it can also be impact, and it can be personal reward. That's capitalism to me, and so I want to be a compassionate capitalist from the perspective that, I want to have an impact. That's the reward at this time in my life.
Has your view on legacy changed over the years?
Not really, no. It's like,
do you even think about it?
not really. I'm not the type to put my name on buildings and that type of stuff. I just think I'm still getting started. I've got more experience and more wrinkles, but I'm just getting started. I've got a lot of good to do, and so I want to do it.
You're how old right now?
21.
Yeah. What advice would you give to younger Mark Cuban?
Don't screw it up.
Or do everything that you did?
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets along the way?
Regrets? I've had a few. Yeah, of course. But, nothing dramatic.
Yeah.
Just normal human things.
I see that your son joins you at a lot of games now.
Not enough, but as many as I can.
Well,
yeah.
I know. I remember the finals. I think I saw you taking a picture with Jack Harlow.
Yeah.
That's got to be cool to have him.
The best thing ever.
To be along for the ride. What has that father-son bonding been
Well, I've
like
got
for
2
you?
daughters too, so that's
Yeah, I don't want to leave them
with
out.
all my kids.
Right,
All
right.
my kids. It's amazing. You know, there's just not enough hours in the day for them. You know, I would spend every minute of every day with them, and you know, it's almost. And I know you'll ask me like running for president. You know, when it's all said and done, and I'm hopefully 105 years old or 115 years old, you know, and on my last breath, when I look back, I don't want it to be, oh wow, I was president. I want those last memories to, you know, when they say you relive your life, I want it to be about my kids and being there in their moments. And, you know, they're teenagers and the oldest is 21. It's a fight just to get them to spend time with me, as anybody with teenagers know. And that's the fight I want to fight that's most important to me.
Who's your son's favorite player?
It was Luca, but now it's Max Christie.
He did the hard shift.
Yeah, because I told him once in MFL, you know, it's the jersey, because you know, it was like.
I saw you. He was with you for the game in LA. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like my daughter, my middle daughter's was Quentin Grimes, and she was just so upset when we traded Quentin.
How did your son react to the trade?
About like I did.
Did you have to break it to him, or did he?
No, he knew.
He,
Like I knew 5 minutes at the most before, and so everybody else was when it hit. Everybody knew. And
did you tell him ahead of time, or did he have to
I didn't
find
know
out?
ahead of
Oh,
time.
you didn't know?
No.
I think that night you told me that you weren't involved with it. So are you like all the way out? Are you not? Do they not consult you on anything, or are they
Nothing.
just?
They might tell me something after the fact, or
Okay.
now with Rick Welts in particular, if there's something going on where I've had experience, I'll reach out to him and just say, hey, expect this, and this. But from a basketball perspective, you know, I hear about it after the fact. I don't hear about anything beforehand.
Is that tough? I mean, because you really took that organization from a pup 25 years ago. Is that tough being?
Yeah,
that
there are
removed?
parts that aren't fun, obviously, especially this month or last month. But, you know, they paid for that right.
Yeah. You don't have regrets about selling the team?
Sometimes I get mad and "Oh, I wouldn't have done this, but, you know, not really, because, you know, go back to why I sold. I don't want my kids to end up in this exact position at some level if they made a mistake, right? I mean, literally imagine if I didn't and my kids had taken over and they made a mistake like this.
You didn't want them to go down, you know, the road of owning the
Not that I
Mavericks,
didn't want them.
or to deal with the criticism of it?
It's just social media has changed things dramatically. And they grew up with social media. All their friends are connected to them on social media. And to log in and, you know, scroll through your feed and just see what we're seeing now, you know, seeing what happened with the Jones family, you know, continuously. I didn't want my kids to go through that. You know, and then there were other things, you know, like you can only scream at the refs and at the league about the refs for so long before it's just like, I'm an idiot. Stop. And
How much money have you paid the refs over the years?
a lot. Not the refs themselves.
No,
I've never paid the refs a penny. I
almost-
offered one penny.
I almost got you there.
Yeah.
No, I mean the league.
League of Fight, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And then there's just the nature of the like Patrick and you know the Sands Corporation, they're better suited to deal with building than I am.
Really, I mean they're real estate.
Yeah,
people.
that's what they do, and
Right.
and I didn't want to find myself in a situation where I couldn't compete because I didn't know how to do that stuff. And with Cost Plus, you know, instead of me diving in having to learn how to build a casino or arena, lobby, that stuff, I'd rather focus on Cost Plus from a time perspective.
Would you ever have traded Luka Doncic?
I'm not going to go there. It's not. It doesn't even matter. You know.
I mean,
matter.
I saw you were at the game though in LA, and I mean that signifies. And I think you dapped up his dad and
Yeah,
stands.
no,
I mean,
Sasha
So there's
and-
there's some sort of.
Well, there was a connection. Just
There's
because we
connection.
traded, like I still talk to Steve Nash. I mean, I went through this before when Steve Nash left and then won 2 MVPs.
Yeah.
Right. The good news is that we went to the finals and won a championship. So I've been through something, but there wasn't social media back then, so it wasn't quite the same. But yeah, I mean, you're going to make mistakes, and you know, I think the biggest challenge that the Mavs have right now is there's nobody who's really outgoing to communicate. And it's not so much what you do, it's how you communicate why you do what you do. And that's their challenge without me in front.
Do you think some of that is because they're kind of new to this? I mean, they've been
I think it's just
owners
not their nature.
And well, they've been also NBA owners for about a year, and I mean, Nico's been GM for what, a few years, but entirely that's not a whole lot of experience. Do you feel like that's part of it? That
no, they're just not me, right? You can't expect them to be me. Where when Steve Nash left, I wrote a blog post explaining why, and talking about all these things. I talked about how we traded for Luka. All these, that's what I did. That was the way I connected to fans. And that's the way I tried to build a connection with fans. They're just not me.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. There's things they're going to do that are better than anything I can do in that regard. But I still think, it may take longer now, but it'll be okay.
Have you talked to Luka since the trade?
Yeah, we texted a few times.
Are you guys good?
Yeah, we're good. It's like, I'm still great with Sasha and Luka's team, right? I'm still friends with them. So, it's just like, it took a while, but, Steve Nash and I are friends again, and so.
You mentioned, was your son upset about the trade?
Yeah, I mean.
Were you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I've said this before, if if the Mavs are going to trade Luka, that's one thing. Just get a better deal. No disrespect to Anthony Davis, but get 3. If I still firmly believe if we had gotten 4 unprotected number ones in Anthony Davis and Max Christie, this would be a different conversation.
That seems to be one of the criticisms following.
Yeah, but it's not my call, so it doesn't matter.
You mentioned that you're an MF.
FL.
Yeah. I mean, that's so hard to say. I'm sorry. I mean, I've
Mass
been here
for
like
life.
8 years. It still
Yeah,
it does not roll
NFL.
off the tongue. But
Yeah.
this has been a tough month plus
Yeah.
for fans. A lot of them are super angry. Are they justified in feeling that way?
Yeah, you're justified however you feel. Yeah. We can't. What makes sports different than every other industry, Google has, Texas Instruments has a record quarter. Nobody throws a parade. And when you win, if fans are passionate enough to show up in 100-degree weather and line the streets, then you've got to expect when things don't go the way they want, they're going to be just as passionate in response.
I've seen some comments on social media, fans who are upset at the whole situation, but some who are upset at you for selling the team. And they feel, I don't know if it's betrayal or what that emotion is, but
They didn't feel that way when we went to the finals last year.
they did not. What would your message to those fans be who feel that,
Father
that you
Time's
sold them out?
undefeated, right? Father Time's undefeated, so nobody plays forever. And so you go through adjustments, and hopefully Nico and Patrick, have a plan, and they'll make it work.
They haven't consulted you at all throughout any of this.
I have not talked to Nico about it. I said hi to Nico twice after the trade.
Are you going to get back into owning an NBA team?
I mean, if someone makes me a deal, but unlikely.
Unlikely. This question comes from your old pal Dale Hansen.
Dale,
if technology keeps replacing people, where do future generations work?
Oh, everywhere, because with AI, you have to be a good critical thinker to know which AI model is going to give you the best answer and how to integrate them into what you're trying to do. And even like at our robotics factory for manufacturing medications, we need people that are working the factory to make sure it works. We use AI to look for critical exceptions and mistakes and failures and the like, and then somebody's got to deal with it, right? So it doesn't seem obvious now, but we've seen the same thing happen with creative destruction with new technology over the past 75 years.
You bring up transparency with some of this, right? And that's kind of been your brand to some degree, but from the Mavs and now with Cost Plus is trying to show the consumer what they're getting. Are there other parts of the healthcare system that can be disrupted? Oh
yeah, the healthcare side of the healthcare system is a joke. I'll give you a simple example. So you guys here at Tegna have an insurance company you work with, and that insurance company creates a variety of plans. And you have different premiums, and you have different deductibles and out-of-pocket costs, right?
Right.
And then all the employees choose which one they think is best for them and their family, right? Let's just say you're a young employee, you don't make a lot of money, and you have a high deductible. And then one day the unthinkable happens and you or someone in your family goes to the hospital and your deductible is $5,000 and not a lot of people have $5,000 in cash. And so you're stuck, right? You have $400 in the bank. How are you going to pay for your out of pocket? Well, your agreement with your insurance company plan for that plan said that they made a deal with the providers, the hospitals or whatever, that the hospitals have to take you no matter what, even if you can't afford your obligation. Well, who takes on that credit default risk? Even though the insurance company created the plan and you as the employee, and the same applies to the AC and everything else, you chose the plan you chose with the high deductible. The hospital and the doctors take on that credit default risk, even though they had no say whatsoever in the forms of the plan and who chose them and what you chose. That makes no sense whatsoever. None.
So what can be done?
Oh, there's a lot that can be done.
Are you working on other disrupting?
Yeah, so we're working
ideas?
on something called Cost Plus Wellness, where we're going to open source the deals that we do. So hospitals rip people off in some respects, but they get ripped off as much, if not more. So, when you hear about all this medical debt that's everywhere, medical bankruptcies, we blame the hospitals. But the reality is that debt and bankruptcy comes from not being able to afford the deductibles, right? That the hospital had nothing to do with selecting. And so that's one problem. Then, even though those hospitals did a deal with your insurance company for those plans, and in that deal it said for a hip replacement, we're going to pay you $15,000. I'm just making up a number. Then, when Mark gets his hip replaced, the insurance company says, no, we're not going to pay you to $15,000. We're going to pay you 10. If you don't like it, sue us. So the hospitals lose 3 to 5% there off the top. Then you've heard about all the pre-authorization denials. Well, that's bad in a lot of respects, but a lot of that is just gamesmanship for the time value of money. So the insurance company says, okay, don't approve them yet. We'll make the doctor go through a call process with a committee that we created to prove that this is medically necessary and makes economic sense, even though they know they're already going to have to approve it, right? But they do it because the longer they delay, the more they get to hold your premiums and earn 4 or 5% interest. And that's doubly bad because it costs the provider that money, because otherwise they would get paid for the hip replacement, and it wastes all the doctor's time. And the insurance, the hospitals and everything have to pay for all those administrators and lawyers and real estate and benefits. And so when you hear about the cost of healthcare, $5 trillion, and 30% or more of it is administrative, that's where that comes from. And there's other things like for out-of-network that are even bigger ripoffs. So I'll give you one more example. So let's just say I take my daughter to play in a basketball tournament, and we're out of town. She breaks her hand, and I take her to a local hospital.
Yeah.
And the local hospital says, okay, we'll take care of it. I showed her my insurance card. The insurance company then says to the local hospital, we'll pay you $500, take it or leave it. And they say, okay, that's normal, $500 for a broken hand. Then they come to my insurance company and they say, we're charging you $2,000 because that's the median price to fix a broken hand in the market where she broke it, and they make the $1,500 spread. It's a ripoff. That spread pricing is a ripoff. So what we're doing with Cost Plus Wellness is kind of open sourcing the whole process. We're going to providers and doctors and clinics and everybody, and we're saying, look, you get ripped off for all these reasons I just mattered. Give us a cheaper cash price. I'll pay you this cash price, let's just say to start, 120% of Medicare for the basic stuff, more for the more complicated hospital stays. But there's going to be no pre-authorizations. I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to. If it's in network for my employees and their families, there's no out-of-pocket to them, so there's no debt for the deductibles like you're facing right now. I'm not going to beat you down on the price. The price is the price, and I'm going to pay you cash immediately. So there's no time value of money cost to you. In exchange for that, I want that 120% of Medicare. We're getting a lot of people to say yes, we're building that right now, but that's not the important part. The important part is we're taking those actual contracts and we're going to publish them so that Tegna and their benefits people, smaller companies that our size or smaller, can look and say, wow, Mark's companies are doing this. I want to copy that, because one of the rules of all these healthcare contracts on the pharmacy side and on the healthcare side is like Fight Club. Number one rule is you can't talk about Fight Club. You can't talk about healthcare and pharmacy contracts. So we're looking to disrupt it just, again, through transparency.
How did it get this bad? I mean, the system.
Because it's so big, right? When you have a $5 trillion industry that's growing, 5 to 10% a year, companies come in and they use technology and they use this and that, and they just try to eke out just a small percentage of it, or a percentage of a percentage, and that's still a ton of money.
Yeah. And trickle down, who does it, and who pays for it? It's always,
Patients,
yeah,
always.
always.
Or your employer, because they know that, like we were talking about the CEO of Tegna, it's not his or her job to understand their healthcare benefits. You're in a competitive industry. They're just trying to, do what you got to do to compete. And so because they don't truly understand their benefits, all the insurance companies and PBMs, the big ones, they know. And so we're working with these things called pass-through PBMs and independent insurance companies to say to CEOs, here, like Cost Plus Drugs is partnered with going on 30 now, pass-through CEOs. Like, I'll give you another example. Your pharmacy claims, your company doesn't own them. So if you want to come up with a program where you decide whether or not you can offer GLP-1s, which everybody knows what they are, you can't talk to Lilly or Novo Nordisk to determine a good wellness plan and a better price, because it's in your PBM contract saying you're not allowed to. And you don't own those claims to look to see, well, is this a better, is this something that's an issue for my employees and their families? And if you try to get that information, they're going to charge you and they're going to take forever because they know what you're doing. And if you can't get that information after you paid for it and waited for the delay, they don't show you the cost per claim. All these games that these big PBMs played are to the detriment of the CEO of every company that uses them. And now there's even lawsuits for not living up to the fiduciary responsibility by the CEO for these things.
Was there a personal experience you had with the healthcare system being, as
everybody
messed up,
does.
that kind of really, I don't know, that stuck with you over the years?
Yeah, well, of course. Like, my mom passed away of lung cancer in 2022, 3 years ago. And we were at St. Clair Hospital, where I grew up, just down the street where I grew up, in Pittsburgh. And they said, okay, she needs a PET scan to determine the severity of the cancer and whatever else. I'm like, okay, we're at the hospital now. Let's just set a time, have her stay the night in the hospital. I'll pay for it, right? Whatever. They're like, no, can't do that. She's got to go home, wait 3 days. I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Did you say, do you know who I am?
They already knew who I was, right? I said, here's the credit card, whatever you want to charge me.
Right.
I'm blessed. I'm like, it's my mom. And they're like, nope, sorry. And it's because the way the rules are set up, if the difference between being an inpatient versus outpatient and their ratings and awards availability are dependent on that. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense whatsoever. So by publishing the contracts that we do, people can start to learn, no, let's do this differently, and you can pay for that right to do it differently. And it may even cost you less than what's going on right now.
When it's all said and done, you want to be remembered for what?
Great dad. Best word. Any parent knows that there's no word that I'd rather hear in any given day than, hey, Dad, from my kids. That's what matters.
What advice would you give to young fathers out there? We can wrap it up with that.
We all figure it out, right? Enjoy the moment.
Enjoy the moment?
Yeah.
Would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, a ton of things. I traveled to too many Mavs games, did, too many Shark Tank seasons, or at least didn't fight to change the schedule like I should have. I always thought, okay, I'll get the time when they get older. And at least I'm doing that now, but I should have done it sooner.
Are you liking this new chapter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I've liked every chapter. I'm the luckiest guy in the world, right? We've all had issues and problems and all that, but